So, in the United States, the probably one of the most famous pictures ever taken from the American Farm Security Administration is Dorothea Lange's migrant mother. Dorothea Lange's career spanned 4 decades. She opened her first studio at the age of 23 in San Francisco. She was married to a painter named Maynard Dixon, but their marriage ended up in divorce because of the hard times of the Great Depression. She gains employment through the Government Works First program, which leads her to work with the Farm Security Administration. The woman pictured here is Florence Owens Thompson. Lange was out photographing in Nipomo, California, which was off of Route 66. And she had been photographing for a couple weeks. And she was just ready to head home after not really photographing anything of good substance. She only had 5 shots in her camera left, and she comes upon Florence Owens Thompson and her children in a camp that was filled with field workers who were picking peas from a pea crop. Unfortunately, the pea crop had frozen, and so they were living off of frozen vegetables that they were picking from the fields and from birds that the children were catching. She had just sold her tires on her car to buy food. And so they were in a really desperate situation. Dorothea Lange recalls the story of the migrant mother. She said, "I saw and approached the hungry and desperate mother as if drawn by a magnet. I do not remember how I explained my presence or my camera to her, but I remember she asked me no questions. I made 5 exposures, working closer and closer from the same direction. A photograph from that shoot, not known as the migrant mother, was widely circulated to magazines and to newspapers. And one shoot that we now call the migrant mother was circulated to magazines and newspapers, and it became a symbol of the plight of the American farm worker of the Great Depression. As Lange describes the situation, she and her children had been living in a really awful situation. But later on, Florence Thompson says that Lange didn't speak to her at all, and that she didn't sell the tires off of her car. Thompson said that Lange had either confused her for another farmer or established what she had understood of her situation in order to make the story better. So basically, she accused her of fabricating the story. One of the things I want to show you about this image is how incredibly detailed the image is in terms of texture. This is a close-up of Dorothea Lange's neck and hand coming into contact with the child's arm, shirt sleeve, and Dorothea Lange's shirt and collar. When you put all of these things together, you see a wide variety of textures that just really worked together well to create a very emotionally gripping photograph. Now, of course, the expression on Florence Thompson's face was part of that emotionally gripping photograph, but the story would not have been as well described had the textures in the work of art not been quite so beautifully described. Not all of Lange's work had to do with the migrant mother. She photographed bread lines in soup kitchens. This particular photograph was taken in San Francisco during the Great Depression. Um, there was a woman named Lois Jordan. She was a wealthy woman and she was living in San Francisco, and the homeless people dubbed her the White Angel. She establishes a soup kitchen to feed the needy and the hungry. She had very little outside funding, and she fed more than 1 million hungry men over 3 years. The Works project was under the leadership of Holgar Cahill, who expanded the types of commissions to include a broader net of media, because at this point, photography was the only media they were funding. And so this project ends up funding hundreds and thousands of artworks by 1936 and employed 6,000 artists. Either half to three quarters living in New York. They got a small stipend, which was $23 a week, and it offered Americans the dignity and value and a place in society, but it also wasn't so much money that they could be comfortable living on it. It also helped them form a community to support one another. Artistic communities are really important. We've talked about that in terms of Picasso. For the people in the United States, because everybody lived at least part-time or three-quarters time in New York, Greenwich Village is developed as a hub for visual art. If you weren't associated with a group out of New York, it was difficult to establish a reputation as an artist. Lang originally operated a portrait studio in San Francisco. That's why that was that studio that we talked about that she opened when she was 23. In San Francisco, she was really moved by the homeless population and the unemployed people that she sees standing in the food lines in San Francisco. These particular pictures were what got her the placement with the Federal Farm Security Administration. This also, by Dorothea Lange, is a genre painting. She wanted to capture her subject in a natural state with a dramatic scene of emotionalism. She never considered herself an artist. She considered herself a photojournalist. She was a really shy person. Her subject matter was often the plight of the poor. She photographed the Japanese internment camps in the 50s, and she photographed what she called the New California, which she felt was a documentation of a changing California. She was in poor health, which often led to... So one last movement here before we wrap up lecture for Unit 1 is American regionalism. American regionalism is a genre that dramatizes the farmer's struggle during the Great Depression. It makes farming seem as if it is a harrowing experience, and it has a total disregard for the contemporary and abstract art. One of the most famous paintings of American regionalism is Grant Wood's American Gothic. Wood was discovered when he submitted this painting to the Chicago Institute of Art for exhibition, where it wins a contest. The prize was $300 and a gold medal, but the museum got to keep the painting. The Evening Post covered the show, and it got instant fame. Wood was classically trained in Europe, and so he called the image American Gothic because of the window that was in the background with the pointed arch. That is a typical symbol of Gothic architecture, the pointed arch in Europe. Um, Wood went to school in Europe, and so including the windows seemed to be oh, homage to his training and schooling in Europe. The male that posed as the model for this painting was a dentist. He was Wood's dentist. And the female model is Wood's sister. None of the models that posed for this painting posed for it together. It was supposed to pay homage to Wood's hometown in Iowa, but when the Iowans saw it, they were not happy with the painting. In fact, it was so poorly received that Wood actually got physical threats for the painting itself. Iowans felt that the wife wasn't presented in a positive manner. It was originally thought to be a satire of provincialism in the United States. But now it's considered a celebration of the spirit of the American morale and American spirit. Wood said that there is satire in it, but only as there is satire in any realistic statement. These are types of people I have known all my life. I tried to characterize them truthfully to make them more like themselves than they are in actual life. I would say that this image by Benton probably embraces American regionalism a little bit more intensely. A lot of you like the painting by Joe Jones in the Columbus Museum of Art. You wrote about it when we did our last writing project there. So let me tell you a little bit about Benton. Early in his career, Benton was a draftsman for the U.S. Navy. It led him away from European influences and towards realism. Benton teaches for many years at the Kansas City Art Institute, and he was Jackson Pollock's teacher. His painting tends to have a bit of a rhythmic flow. His style was bold. It had bold colors and strong lines. And the characteristics in this painting have an almost caricature-like appearance. It's a scene from Missouri. Benton's paintings are famous for showing ordinary people doing common things. So here they're threshing the field and tying up haystacks. He drew and painted portraits, landscapes, and scenes of people at work in farms, factories, and busy cities. He is best known for his works that are public murals. This particular image, Benton captures the farm hands and the farm help pulling in the wheat crop in Missouri. You see that the canvas sort of takes on this unrealistic feeling to it in terms of the shape of the land. It has a sense of cartooniness to it. It reminds me of something you would see by Warner Brothers. It has bright colors and bold shapes. Most of you, whenever I asked you to find a realist painting, told me that the Joe Jones painting at the Columbus Museum of Art was realism. Because you associated this type of work, this backbreaking farm work, with the type of subject matter that the realists focused on. While this isn't a realism painting, I do see that the subject matter feels like it would fall into the realism category. The difference between a realism painting and this type of painting has to do with that cartoony, bold shapes feeling. It sort of has a not real, it sort of has this setting that feels like it's somewhat imagined. You can see that through the lines that the shapes create and how dramatic and flowy the lines feel.